who starts, who sits, and how to become the greatest of all time. This is the Fantasy G.O.A.T.
What's up, what's up, what's up? Welcome to the Fantasy G.O.A.T. That's Jason Feinberg. I'm Mike Davis. Coming up on the Fantasy G.O.A.T, we got Ian Ritchie of Full Time Fantasy. He's dropping by to discuss strategy and season surprises. And later on, Jason and I play a game of this or that and discuss fantasy football punishments. But first, we start with our good friend, Dr. Nithin Natwa. He's the GOAT of doctors. He's at Fantasy Docs on social media. There he is, Dr. Nithin Natwa. And day in, day out, he's dropping fantasy medical advice on social media. So it's great to see you, Doc. Let's get right to it. So Puka Nacua, what's the update on him, Jason? I know you love your guy, Puka Nacua. What's the update on him, and when is he returning to the field?
Yeah, so Puka Nacua had that PCL sprain, which initially they were just calling bursitis, and then he went from being day-to-day to going on IR pretty rapidly. And then even past that, they said that he should be back around week 8, 9, and I think that's reasonable. The PCL is much thicker than the ACL, so it's rarely ever completely torn, and when nothing else is torn, they don't usually repair it. It usually is able to repair itself just based on the blood supply. But with that being said, I do think he's going to require a ramp-up period, so he might be back on the field by week 8, 9, but I do think it would take until, around week 11 to 13 to really see the Puka that we know coming back, and that's why whenever anyone at this point in time in this season is asking to choose between Kupp and Puka, I'm going with Kupp this season, despite all of Kupp's metrics being a little bit more advanced in age and stuff.
Yeah, see, I'm smart. I took both of them in different leagues.
Nice.
I took one in every league, one or the other. See how that went? Now, Dr. Nitwa, I didn't take Christian McCaffrey. I took Jordan Mason. So for me, I want him to take his time. But for a lot of people, how bad is the situation? When will he come back?
So I do think that he is going to come back, but the thing is that the team that he's with isn't really focused on the fantasy points that he's doing. They're focused on him being good for the playoffs. So I do think that he returns in, I don't know, maybe like 2-3 weeks. But I think the only outcome there is that they're going to ease him into it, and he's going to sap touches off of Mason, and he's also not going to be that productive. So if you're a Mason owner, I would be trying to trade him at this point in time because I do think CMC's coming back. I just don't think it's going to be the CMC that wins you the league at this point in time.
All right, lastly, Doc, this is a guy I have a lot of stock in. Nick Chubb, he's been sitting on my bench on the IR for quite a bit. How's he coming along, and do you trust him to be the good old Nick Chubb that we know and love when he returns?
Yeah, Nick Chubb's a beast. We've all seen him squatting, I think, those 500-pound weights and everything, and I get a lot of backlash every time I say I don't think he's unfortunately going to come back in top form this year, because squatting isn't really an indication of how good he's going to be at football. I'm sure this guy's going to be able to squat 500 pounds into his 40s, but that doesn't mean that he's going to be ripping apart like NFL lines in his 40s. And that's the discrepancy, I think, there, is that lifting weights is a much different than being out of control at the NFL level. And he's about 10 years removed from a major knee surgery and about 1 year removed from another major knee surgery. And arthritis usually pops up about 10 years after these major knee surgeries. So on top of recovering from the ACL tear that was repaired, he also likely has some early findings of arthritis just based on evidence-based medicine. So that's why I don't think he's going to be good this season. That's not to say he doesn't probably have 1 or 2 seasons left in him of high-end fantasy value, but it just seems unreasonable for me to expect anything more than maybe back-end RB2 numbers out of him this season.
See, it's kind of like you, Mike, when you play Madden.
Yes.
You used to play Madden on beginner mode with no offsides.
Rookie
and you would kill it. But
Yes.
now it's almost like you have to play Madden advanced with the rules.
All Madden, right.
That's like basically Chubb right now.
100%.
Yeah.
And I can easily squat 400 pounds into my 40s as well.
500.
Yeah. Oh, even 500.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, of course. All right, Dr. Natwa, thank you so much. You're the best. Go follow at Fantasy Docs on social media to keep up with all the latest fantasy injury news. We'll see you next time, Doc.
Take care.
All right, now let's get into a little bit of this or that. We're starting off with a tough one, Jason. Should fantasy managers ride with Tyreek Hill or trade him?
Yeah, well, Mike, we both have Tyreek Hill, and we've been suffering because of it. Yeah. However, I'm hearing that the doctor has already cleared Tua, and he only has to wait for his IR, to come back. I think he's still going to play, and if that's the case, I'm going to keep him.
Okay, you know what? I think it's crazy. We rail against Tua all the time. He can't play in 50 below degree weather, all this kind of stuff. But then you see, look how capable he is and how a Tyler Huntley and, a Skylar Thompson can't even get Tyreek or Jalen Waddle the ball. I still think if Tyreek goes off and he's on your bench, I'm just going to want to jump off a building.
Right.
So I'm not going to be able to not play him, unfortunately, but I'm hoping they trade for somebody. Please, Joe Flacco.
Somebody.
Go to Miami.
It's crazy how many backup quarterbacks we really want to play and how many we don't want to play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, next up in this or that. For the rest of the season, would you rather roll with Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery?
For some reason, I'm going to go with David Montgomery. I'm not sure why. I think they're both great, but I feel like there's a little more security in Montgomery.
Yeah, I think he's got a higher floor, but I think the ceiling is better for Jahmyr Gibbs. He's just the sexier pick. Jason, it's back to last week. You're the Marianne, I'm the Ginger for Gilligan's Island.
Right.
So I got to go with Jahmyr Gibbs.
Always a great topic, by the way.
100%. Cousin Marilyn, though, from the Munsters. The first one, Beverly Owen. Oh my Lord. I wasn't as much of a Pat Priest guy, more Beverly Owen. But
you don't want to get into the Three's Company Chrissy replacement, though.
No, of course. And
gotcha.
my bench looks like Grandpa Al Lewis, so that's this is for old people.
Sure.
All right. Finally, for this or that, two QBs with revitalized their career this season. Would you rather have Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold?
All right, this is an easy one. I'd rather have Baker Mayfield today,
okay.
But Sam Darnold for the rest of the season.
Interesting. Okay,
yeah.
I love Sam Darnold and everything that's going on there. I just love Minnesota, Kevin O'Connell, even defensively what Flores is doing. The team is just, they're looking good. Addison looked good coming back. So I don't know. I'm especially Tampa Bay beat up on my Philly team. So,
you were sitting with me when that happened.
Yeah,
I always feel so bad for you.
I'm going to go with Darnold. All right.
All right.
Coming up on the Fantasy GOAT, everybody, we're injecting you with the high-level fantasy insight you need. Ian Ritchie from Full Time Fantasy. He's going to join us in the studio. That's next. All right, welcome back to the Fantasy GOAT. Well, Jason, surprises can be a good thing or a bad thing.
That is right. And to help us break it down with the biggest surprises from this season so far is Ian Ritchie with Full Time Fantasy. All right, Ian, what is, would you say, your first surprise?
First surprise is Sam Darnold in the Minnesota. Just overall, I think as a fantasy perspective, Sam Darnold is who we were hoping he would be when he was drafted out of USC. And now he's with the quarterback whisperer, Kevin O'Connell, in Minnesota, who actually made Josh Dobbs reasonable last year. I think he's been doing amazing, and he has really made Justin Jefferson relevant, and he's kept that team very relevant. They're winning all their games. And on the defensive side, Brock Purdy, after the game, was very complimentary of the defense, said that he was very confused the whole time. Brian Flores doing a great job. I would absolutely say they're the surprise of the season so far.
Yeah, it's a lovely surprise. But one surprise that's not so lovely, it's all these injuries, Ian, right? That's another big surprise.
It seems to get worse every year. And early in the season, we keep saying, every year, oh, this is the worst year for injuries. And I believe it has to have something to do with guys not playing in the preseason.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's a lot of these soft tissue type injuries, but it is really devastating people's rosters. And so to draft for depth, and to make sure you have depth during your drafts has really become really critically important, especially at positions where it's difficult, like running back. There's a lot of receivers you can pick up that are middle of the road.
Right.
Yeah.
But really, you have to have startable running backs every week, and it shows the importance of drafting depth at running back because of all these injuries.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
No, for sure. And like these, usually you hear the statistic, usually like the first round of ADP, half of them don't even, obviously Christian McCaffrey, but half of them don't pan out.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And this year, a lot of the complaint was, I'm in the back half of the draft. I want to be in the front half of the draft. And ironically, it's the back half of the draft that's really paying the bills right now. And the front half of the draft and the guys people drafted early has been a real surprise, whether it's been CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Breece Hall's been okay.
Right, not first overall pick.
No, not at all. And then you got guys that kind of slipped. The Barkleys, the Justin Jeffersons, guys like that that are doing great. And so I think that the ADP this year was all over the board.
Yeah.
And I think the first round was upside down.
Yeah, you're starting to see there's a lot more credence you can put into like those people like in our league, Terry, who just drafts Josh Allen every year in the first round because it kind of makes sense. But all right, lastly, Ian, our producer James, our resident Yinzer from Pittsburgh, he's going to love this next surprise you have for us.
Justin Fields.
Yeah.
Justin Fields has been great. You know, he went from a situation where their offense wasn't very creative. They relied on him to only run the football. Mike Tomlin brought him in with no expectation, took the pressure off by announcing Russell Wilson the starter early on in the process. And then fortunately for the Steelers, Russell Wilson got hurt and Justin Fields took the reins. And last week was a great example of his talent. He had 300 yards passing with a touchdown. He had 57 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Having that dual threat is incredibly important, and it's been a great surprise, and I'm really happy to see Justin Fields flourish with Mike Tomlin this year.
It's an exciting thing for him. All right, well, Ian, stay right there because when we return, we're going to be discussing the best strategies to unleash for the rest of the fantasy football season, so stick around. We got more with Ian after the break. All right, so we're always trying to help you win here on the Fantasy G.O.A.T, and part of that is to look at things a little differently, Jason. Everybody in your league is looking one way, maybe you zig when everybody else is zagging.
Yeah, so Ian Ritchie continues to join us right now with providing a unique perspective. Ian, we're talking strategy here. What's the first strategy?
I like going after the waiver wire very aggressively.
Okay.
And I think it's important to understand it's okay to recycle the bottom of your roster on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Right? The worst thing you want is to have 3 or 4 decisions for your last spot. Recycle some of those guys out and try and find somebody that's got some upside. So, you know, being ahead of the curve on your free agency is really important. Recycle the bottom couple spots, take a chance on a backup player, take a chance on somebody that you see rising when you watch games, and take a shot. And if it doesn't work out, recycle them out the next week. But be aggressive on the waiver wire to find that next diamond in the rough.
It was such a pain. I had about 4 different guys. I was struggling all week on which one to put in that final flex spot.
Yeah.
And guess what? They all did about the same.
That's exactly right.
It always works out that way. All right, so next, Ian, it sounds simple, but it's certainly critical. Let's talk about targets and snap counts.
Targets and snap counts will give you a really good idea of who's trending up and who's trending down. And you can look at them a couple different ways. The snap count will give you an idea of who's in a lot, right? And if you played 90% of the snaps, you played 84% of the snaps. But then you can look and you can see the target share, right? Because you put the two things together, it kind of gives you an idea of who's in there to catch passes and who can be in there to run block. Right? And so paying attention to that will help you on the waiver wire as well, but it really gives you a better understanding of who's getting all the action, who's getting all the attention. And so it's a really great thing to look at each week as you move forward, and it'll help you with your free agency decisions.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, what's the last strategy for us?
Well, the last one is bye weeks.
Yeah.
So we have bye weeks starting this week, and it's a big deal. There's a lot of good players missing. And so it's important to think about planning ahead for your bye weeks and not waiting till week of. If you wait till the week of, your options of players or defenses will be a lot less. If you're looking 2 or 3 weeks ahead, you'll have more opportunities to grab the person, the player, or potentially the defense that you want for that specific week based on the matchup that they have instead of waiting till the last minute. So plan ahead for those to maximize your opportunity.
Okay, all right. So that's a lot of interesting stuff. All right. Great insight. It's always about trying to just kind of think, next level. There's surface level fantasy stuff, and then there's stuff when you dig deeper, and it's really, critical, and it can take you over the hump.
I'm still trying to get over the week where I felt like Seattle, when they were playing Detroit, they had the ball the whole game. And every time, because I had so many opponents that had the Seattle guys, and every minute they were just, my team, I was watching them lose one by one because of that. It was,
There's always something in fantasy football, but that's what makes it exciting. Yeah. Well, great stuff there. And guess what? If you're sad because you feel like you don't get enough of Ian Ritchie, don't worry. He's sticking around for more. Next up, Ian joins Jason and I for a game of this or that.
All right, welcome back to the Fantasy G.O.A.T. So earlier, Mike and I played a game of this or that. Now we turn the tables on our guru, Ian Ritchie.
I love this triple box we got going on. So Ian Ritchie, you're sticking with us. We all want to know your this or that take. So let's kick it off. Ian, this or that, stream defenses or ride with one good one?
Well, during bye weeks, it's really hard to ride with one good one. and it gives you more flexibility to stream defenses. So what I would recommend is if you have one of the top defenses in the league, one of the top 3 or 4 defenses, I would ride a defense. If you don't, I would take that spot and I would stream defenses on a weekly basis to give you more flexibility with the bye weeks.
Okay, so if you have one of those top tier ones, the San Frans, the that kind of stuff.
Yeah, or you think you have them like Dallas, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I got to stream again.
That's right.
Yeah, all right, I agree with Ian on that. What about you, Jason?
That's what I've been doing. If I have a good defense, because I'm in several leagues like you, Mike, and you, Ian. But if I have a good defense, I ride with them. But if not, I am streaming, and a lot of times I get it wrong, but at least I'm trying.
Yeah.
Okay, what about handcuffing RBs or saving the bench spot?
Well, that's a great question. It's very situational. Certain offenses that are very explosive, that the running backs score lots and lots of points, it's a great idea to handcuff them. And I made a mistake in some leagues this year where I drafted Kenneth Walker and I didn't take Charbonnet, and I paid the price. Just like this year, if you drafted McCaffrey and you'd had your Jordan Mason. I'm a big believer in handcuffs. When you do it, it doesn't pay off, and when you don't, it always burns you. So the answer is I would keep the handcuff on the high-octane offense especially, and I would keep the handcuff as long as possible until you have to have that flexibility.
To me, it's hard to do that in leagues where Jason Feinberg is the commissioner because we have like no bench spots and no IR spots. So
we have bench spots, we just don't have IR spots.
There's not a ton of bench spots.
And there's no trades either.
So it's very.
Well, hey,
I feel like I'm handcuffed. Forget handcuffing Jordan Mason. I'm literally handcuffed to the radiator.
Well, listen, I modeled the whole league after full-time fantasy, so you can blame Ian.
Oh,
yeah, blame me.
All right, lastly, Ian, this or that, what should we do? Should we roster 2 QBs or just really have one? Is it situational, I guess?
You know, there's a lot of people that roster 1 QB, again, if they have one of the top few, right? And because it gives them flexibility. But boy, I'll tell you, with all the injuries that are happening and all the problems in the NFL, I've become a big believer in rostering 2 QBs over the last year. But previously, in previous years, I've always rostered 1 QB and then felt comfortable streaming. But now I feel much more comfortable rostering 2 good QBs with the expectation that one of them will probably go down at one point. And it's really helpful to have that really solid top-end other quarterback on your roster.
What do you feel about that, Jason?
That's actually the one position I haven't been streaming pretty much at all. I've pretty much when Jordan Love went out, that was brutal. It was brutal because I made the decision only to go with Jordan Love. I paid the price, but other than that, I'm pretty much rolling with my quarterback.
See, I agree with Ian on this because like Anthony Richardson hasn't been producing the way that he was drafted in the area he was getting drafted. So it's like if you could get your hands on a Baker or a Darnold off the waiver wire, maybe you rather roll with him. Even Kyler hasn't been as consistent as you think. So it really is dependent, I think. If you have Lamar, if you have Josh Allen, it's different. But Anthony Richardson, Kyler, I bought big on both of those guys. And now I got like Darnold rolling in most leagues.
Who would have thought?
Yeah. Exactly. You would have never thought that. All right, guys, coming back after a short break, guess what? We're sticking with Ian Ritchie. We're talking punishments, fantasy punishments. I know all about that. Jason punished me big time last year. Ian's going to tell us some of the best ones he's seen throughout his career in fantasy football.
This is the Fantasy GOAT.
All right, kids. Well, welcome back to the Fantasy GOAT. Ian, a kid it's a little goat. A baby goat is called a kid. That's why we do that. But
I think with 2 Ds.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Well, if you watched this last season, you know that, and you also remember my fantasy punishment was to go to a diner, eat an absurd amount of pancakes. I did add chocolate chips to them.
Yes.
And all the while eating those pancakes with a teddy bear that I was on a date with. It was a good-looking teddy bear, I have to say.
Sure.
But I did get some weird looks from other diners at the Black Bear Diner. Now, it's looking like I might get punished again, though, Jason.
For right now, I am winning again. I can thank Nico Collins lately for that.
Yes, 100%. So we're going to talk about some of the other punishments that people can do. Ian, you're still with us. In your history of fantasy football, you've seen a lot of crazy punishments. Tell us about some of the ones that come to mind.
This is for the loser, right?
Yes.
Of the league.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Everybody's come up in the last handful of years with some really kind of crazy punishments. The ones closest to me.
Yeah.
The craziest ones are having to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to take everybody out to a steak dinner where they can order whatever they want.
Wow.
Yeah, and that one can run up the bill up $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 easily, and that actually absolutely happened in a league which a bunch of guys at the country club play in. And and they ran up his tab quite a bit, up to about $6,000 on a steak dinner for losing their fantasy league.
Right.
So we felt pretty bad about that one. And then being all the time and running all of our fantasy championship drafts there, we see a lot of people coming into draft, and therefore we see a lot of the punishments from the previous year.
Oh, right.
Them coming into wearing a wedding dress, right, and having to marry something, which is hilarious. We've seen people having to wear a wig and a dress. And jump into the pool with that on as everybody filmed them. So there's a lot of fun stuff that goes on for the punishments that we see down. It mostly involves the dress or the dress up or the makeup or things like that they have to wear. We saw one case where they were videotaping a documentary of the guy telling him why he was such a loser, and that was always really funny for the it was a roast of why he's such a loser, and then they put that on all their social media.
Wow, I like that. There's a lot of, I've already worn a wedding dress on live TV.
You have. So, you didn't even lose fantasy football.
So it's hard to embarrass me, but we'll figure something out.
I think the craziest one that I've seen was the loser had to watch Yentl, and then do a full report on it, an essay style, and a minimum amount of words.
All right, we'll do that, or you just have to sit in a room for 48 hours and just watch Sophie's Choice.
Right, see, that's brutal.
The entire time.
It's pretty much the same thing.
Yes, we'll figure something out. Ian, thanks for being here. Great
Thanks for
show
having me.
with you. Everybody have a great fantasy football week. We'll see you next time. For Ian Ritchie with Full Time Fantasy, Jason Feinberg, I'm Mike Davis. Good luck. We'll see you next time.
See you later, everybody.